Well, I'm not an expert. I'm not an authority. I'm someone who has been a murderer for almost 20 years.
Can you say how many people might be doing crimes like you were doing?
It would be a guess, but it's not. It's far more than 35.
Edmund Kemper, aka the co-ed killer, while a notorious serial killer, is also one of the main reasons we have insights on how a killer like him thinks and behaves that we still use to catch other killers like him today. Born in 1948 to Colonel Stage and Edmund M.L. Kemper II, World War II veteran, future serial killer, like many like him, lived a pretty crap childhood. His mother constantly berated and humiliated him, which the fact that she had borderline personality disorder made this much worse, to the point where she would lock him in the basement like Harry Potter because she thought he would molest his sisters. Jeez, if Harry wasn't a wizard, he would have totally became a serial killer. Anyways, at a young age, Kemper pretty quickly started to have his little fantasies about his murders and started getting some practice in early on. He talks about his intro into torturing and killing small animals and performing sexual rituals on dolls, and also setting fire, fitting 2 of the 3 of the homicidal triad. He also likely wet the bed past the age of 7, but not many people would admit to that. When Kemper was 14, he tried to go away to his father's, but he wasn't wanted there, so he ended up just going to live with his grandparents up at their ranch, where he then shot and killed both of them after having an argument with his grandmother. Afterwards, he just called his mom to let her know what a great job he had done, and then later called the police. Since he was still pretty young, he was only hospitalized, where he was diagnosed with schizophrenia, which he doesn't actually have. At this time, he was also given an IQ test where he scored a 136, considering him a genius. When he turned 21, he was released under the care of his mother, even though basically everyone there thought it was a terrible idea. Kemper likely only got let out because he was smart enough to convince everyone that he was rehabilitated, even with a head in the back of his skull. He was also pretty easy to get along with, as long as you didn't remind him of his mother, which Grandma already made that mistake. Now that he was an adult, Kemper was absolutely massive at a staggering 6'9". I've got a cousin who's 6'6", and he towers over me. At this point, Kemper wanted to be a cop, and while he might have been a decent one, it's probably not a great idea for someone who's criminally insane to become a cop. And he was too tall anyway. So, what happens when you combine a very large, intellectually gifted individual with a domineering bipolar mother with an absent father, constant rejection from women, and strip away the only career that actually interests him? Well, you kill people, obviously. Since his mother worked at the local university, Kemper had university tags on the car that he drove, making any of the students give him a very misplaced trust. He wanted to pick up hitchhikers so that way he could make friends, but them being alive made them feel really distant to him, which ends up making him feel more rejection. So naturally he drives them to a secluded area and either shoots, stabs, or suffocates them. Now that they were dead, he felt a lot more comfortable with them and probably liked them a little too much. With the bodies, he would lob off the heads of his victims and bury them in his mother's yard so that way they would face her window because, she would always like people to look up to her. Since the majority of his victims were college students and college girls, he earned himself the name the co-ed killer. After killing 6 of these girls, he figured that he was ready to go kill his mom now. He went up to her bed at night where she proceeded to berate him like usual, stating that she hasn't had sex in months because of him, so naturally he bashes her head in with a hammer and decapitates her, and made sure that he fulfilled her lack of attention. He also threw her vocal cords into the garbage disposal, which spat them back out at him, which Kemper took to as she'll never stop bitching at him. After his fun with the corpse, his murderous urges weren't quite satisfied, so he figured he'd get one more for the road and called up a friend of his mother's and have her come over so he could finish up his murder spree. Now that he was satisfied, he went over to his old cop buddies and let them know that Big Ed had killed some people, and now he wants old Sparky. Since he was 24 at this point, there was no arguing that he was too young, but California also doesn't like the death penalty, so he just got life at the Vacaville State Prison, where he remains to this day. So what makes Ed Kemper tick? Well, the shit that he endured as a child caused him to develop antisocial personality disorder in the form of sociopathy, making him indifferent to anything moral and destroyed the usual emotions that someone should have. While he was diagnosed with schizophrenia, he doesn't fit all of the criteria that's actually required for it, so it's more likely that he had schizotypal, which is a less severe form and more comes off as socially awkward and overly paranoid without hearing all the demons in your walls or anything. And based on his behavior, he likely had passive-aggressive personality, which saying that he felt resentment towards anyone in a position of authority and hated being told what to do. Based on this, we can assume that Kemper was a power control-oriented killer based on his constant need to establish dominance over others in his life. Now, who do we know that might have caused that? Now, if you are bipolar, or you think you might be, go see a doctor and take your damn meds. And if you think your partner might be bipolar, don't abandon your child, even though you should either way. Also, no matter how much you like Harry Potter, don't lock your kid in the basement, especially if the bastard's already 6 foot and banging his head on the ceiling. In other words, don't be a shitty parent and actually raise your kid.